Welcome to the September 1st meeting of the Murfreesboro City Council. You're seeing some new faces that are up here tonight, so I want to welcome Austin Maxwell and Jamie Averwater, our two newly elected council members. We had a ceremony before where we took our oath of office. Madeline Scales-Harris is here again for another 4 years, and y'all are stuck with me for another 4 years. So, Austin Maxwell, you have our prayer and our pledge.
Absolutely. Will, bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together this evening. We'd ask that you help us make the best decisions possible for all involved in the city of Murfreesboro and help us move forward together as a city. Amen. You will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one ceremonial item tonight. Ray, if you'd like to come up. Sir. Come on up. Great to see you. Whereas the city of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, our community has a great admiration and the utmost gratitude and respect for all men and women who have and are selflessly serving their country and their community in the armed forces. And whereas veterans have paid the high price of freedom by leaving their families and communities and placing themselves in harm's way for the good of all. And whereas the contribution and sacrifices of the men and women who serve the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and way of life enjoyed by our citizens. And whereas many men and women in uniform have given their lives while serving in the armed forces. And whereas citizens of our country have received the Purple Heart Medal as a result of being wounded while engaged in combat with an enemy force, construed as a singularly meritorious act of essential services. And whereas the city of Murfreesboro seeks to remember and recognize veterans who are recipients of the Purple Heart Medal. And now, therefore, I, Shane McFarland, Mayor of the city of Murfreesboro, on behalf of the entire city council, do hereby and proclaim the city of Murfreesboro a Purple Heart City, honoring the service and sacrifice of our nation's men and women in uniform, wounded or killed by the enemy while serving to protect our freedoms. All right, congratulations.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. City Council, thank you. I received my Purple Heart in 2006 in the Battle of Ramadi. There were 47 given out that day. And in the history of the Purple Heart, 1.8 million people, soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors have received the Purple Heart Medal. And I want to give congratulations to my fellow VFW comrade, Austin Maxwell, for being elected to the City Council, and I want to thank you guys all for your patience and time with this. Thank you.
All right, and I will say this too, if you see a lot of our emergency service responders who are out there, you'll notice that they have a veterans tag on their uniform. So not only do you want to thank them for the service that they're giving the city of Murfreesboro, but also thank you to the service that they gave and continue to give to our country. All right, we have election results from the city recorder.
This is just the official, making it official that we got the election results from Rutherford County Election Commission, and before the meeting tonight, the newly elected and re-elected were sworn in by Judge Toby Gilley, so it's making it official.
All right. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. We'll move to the consent agenda. Anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda?
If not, I move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move to minutes. You have the minutes of the city council meeting August 10th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we'll move to old business. You have ordinance 22-021, increasing the bid threshold, and this is second and final reading.
Mayor, could I just make one comment? We discovered reviewing this ordinance that there was one revision to it that was excluded. What we're going to ask is that you pass this ordinance as it's presented and as it was passed on first reading, but I just wanted to let you know that we will be coming back with another ordinance that makes that last revision that we overlooked.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We have ordinance 22-034, amendment to the Murfreesboro City Code pertaining to the use of the parking garage.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move into land use matters. You have ordinance 22-OZ23, the zoning for property along Lascassas Pike. And this is second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move to new business, and you have the plan of services, annexation, and zoning for property along Elam Road, in Joby Jackson Parkway. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor McFarland and members of council. Our first public hearing tonight is with regards to the annexation and the plan of services for property located along Elam Road. And just for the benefit of the folks in the audience tonight, I know that there are some folks here to speak. The first public hearing that we'll be having will be with respect to the annexation and the plan of services. And the second public hearing will be with respect to the zoning of the property, very similar to how to the public hearings that we had at the Planning Commission. The annexation request is for the 0.7 acre parcel that is colored in blue in that circle. It formerly housed a church, but the church was demolished, and it was recently purchased by Swanson Development, and Swanson submitted the annexation petition for that property. In looking at their annexation petition and at the zoning request, which will be the next item on the agenda, we determined that, staff determined that it would be prudent to study the annexation of Elam Road from I-24 to Manchester Pike, as well as the annexation of the frontage road, the Elam Road, I-24 frontage road. So the right-of-way of Elam Road, here as I've drawn that line, about 3,700 linear feet, and the frontage road. That frontage road just serves this one parcel right here, which houses a couple of billboards. It's not owned by Swanson, but that property that it serves is in the city limits, and so because it serves a property that's inside the city limits, we felt it appropriate to include that frontage road in the annexation study. And the right-of-way of Elam Road in between Manchester Pike and I-24, it connects an existing roadway that's in the city limits. The intersection of Manchester Pike and Elam Road is in the city limits now. It's adjacent to the Whitworth Buchanan Middle School and near the Maples subdivision along Manchester Pike. Because the zoning request, the subsequent zoning request that you'll be considering shortly does propose access to Elam Road, this would be connecting that intersection that's already in the city limits with this property that is proposed to have access to Elam Road. And so because of that access and because it will be carrying city traffic that will be navigating between points in the city limits, we thought it prudent to study that right-of-way for annexation. The county road board did vote to grant their consent for the annexation of that county right-of-way of Elam Road, and the state provided a statement of no objection to the annexation of its right-of-way. That frontage road is part of state right-of-way, as is where that frontage road comes into Elam Road. But the only private property being studied for annexation is that 0.7 acre parcel owned by Swanson Development. The plan of services has been included in your agenda materials. It demonstrates that we can provide services to the subject property and the subject right-of-way upon annexation. Staff supports the annexation of the one parcel and the two adjacent rights-of-way because the study area parcel and the rights-of-way are located within the city of Murfreesboro's existing urban growth boundary and are contiguous with the existing city limits. Number two, now that the church is no longer in place, an industrial use tied to the adjacent planned development seems to be a more appropriate use, especially as it can improve connectivity in the area. And that's one of the reasons why we feel that the annexation of this tract is important, because it does provide connectivity that we'll discuss in greater detail during the zoning public hearing. The proposed future land use map that is pending before before Planning Commission right now contains a infill service line, which is the area which staff has proposed and Planning Commission is considering, the area of which we could annex within the remainder of the planning horizon of the future land use map. And both the rights-of-way and the private property are within the infill service line. Elam Road ties back into Manchester Pike, which is recommended to be widened to 3 lanes between Elam Road and Joe B. Jackson Parkway in the city's 2040 major transportation plan. The new ingress-egress at the southern end of this property, of this development, through the proposed parcel that's requested for annexation, can help reduce long-term traffic impact on Joe B. Jackson Parkway. And the new ingress-egress at the southerly end of the parcel will provide additional ingress-egress for emergency services. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing on the annexation and the plan of services. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on this matter on July the 13th and voted to recommend its approval to council for both the parcel and for the right-of-way. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Blomley? Okay, we're going to need to hold a public hearing for the plan of services and for the annexation. And so for our newer council members, I know some of you have dealt with this on the Planning Commission, but the state law changed in 2010. We have to hold now a public hearing for the annexation and for plan of services that we can provide services, and then we have to have a public hearing on the zoning request. If the zoning request fails after the plan of services and the annexation, the plan of services and the annexation fails as well. So, all right, so we'll need to hold a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, if you'll come to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes as an individual, 5 minutes as a group. If you'll state your name and address, if you'll keep all your questions directed towards the council, we'll get those answered at the end of the public hearing. All right, this public hearing is open for just the plan of services and the annexation.
My name is George Nelson. I live at 5704 Elam Road. I've lived there 8 years now, and I'm here today to talk about some issues that are concerning annexing the part of Elam Road that runs right in front of my home. We were told when we were at the Planning Commission that the sole purpose of this gate or egress and entrance for the back of the industrial area was for emergency vehicles only. That's why I was approved. They stood on that and said, this is what we want, this is what we need because of, we need a way to get emergency vehicles to the back of the place. Well, just from what I heard, that's not really the case. They said they're going to allow vehicles to enter that road, that area, that exit and entrance, all types of vehicles. So that means we're going to have triple the amount of traffic. So this is going to cause a huge problem for our area because of the traffic. 18-wheelers will come down our road. I don't care if you widen it 10 lanes, it's going to be a problem. We are afraid that this access is going to be a hindrance to all the people that live there. People are going to try to take alternate routes like Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is a one-lane road. It's a one-lane road. And you're going to try to get people that are going to try to circumvent Elam and try to get out to Manchester Highway. That's not going to work. We also have 2 cemeteries that are located along Elam Road. One at the Manchester end, one at the I-24 end. How's this going to affect those cemeteries? When you widen that road, the roads are going to be right on top of, especially the one at Manchester Pike, the road's going to be right on top of the cemetery. I don't know what the distance a road can be from a cemetery, but I'm sure it's not 10 to 15 feet, which will end up being. Again, the traffic issue, if you allow people to exit that south, or I shouldn't say, yeah, I guess it is the south end of the industrial complex at peak times that they can be coming to work or going home. We also have 2 schools that are there. We have the middle school and we have an elementary school down the road. Traffic will be a nightmare. Even if you put a traffic light there, you're going to have people trying to get to work, and you're going to have people trying to bring their kids to school all at the same time. Or you're going to have people trying to go home, and you're going to have kids leaving school to go back home. So there's going to be a tremendous traffic problem during that time. So we feel that that entrance doesn't need to be there except for one thing: emergency vehicles only. And that will prevent traffic from having to go up and down that road that doesn't need to be there. And would be no need to expand that road to a 3-lane road. You can put a gate up there called the Knox Gate, which only would have access by emergency vehicles, fire trucks, police officers, EMS.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. All right, anyone else wishing to speak for or against this annexation request?
Good evening. My name is Carla Upton. I live at 3386 Mount Tabor Road, right along the area of traffic where the other gentleman mentioned that people would take as an alternate road. They already take that road as an alternate way through to Manchester Pike. I leave to drop my son off at work about 6 in the morning, and I get back about 6:45 when the school kids are out there standing on the road. It is a 1-lane road. When you pass a vehicle, I drive a car, and if there's a truck, like a big pickup truck coming in the other direction, you are on the edge of the road when you have to pass each other. If cars are going to accelerate the number of vehicles that are going to take that as a way around Elam Road, they do now already, and they come at high speeds, well over the traffic speed limit, and there are children standing on the edges of the road waiting for their school buses. And so I think I'm against the annexation of this because I believe it will bring more traffic into that area, especially during the going to work and going to school time periods. In addition, there's already been some construction on the Elam roadside. I'm not sure exactly what it's for. It may have been for utilities, but I saw the orange signs out there the other day. And we already have seen dump trucks and things coming down that road. If they are running those large trucks through and going around Elam Road, which I've seen some do, our overhead power lines are low, and I know our cable line got clipped by something and pulled off of the pole before by somebody coming through. We suspect it might have got caught on a dump truck, but we don't know. It just was like gone. The cable people were very surprised. But the main consideration we have is that the increase of traffic and the people who are not familiar with driving on such a narrow road. I know that, sometimes the big pickup trucks pass each other and their side view mirrors are like inches from each other. So if you have someone who's not familiar with the road and they're speeding, there's going to be an increase, I believe, in traffic incidents. So anyway, I just wanted to state that and to say that I am against this annexation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upton. All right, anyone else wishing to speak for or against this annexation request?
Good evening. My name is Jack Clausen. I reside at 132 Melstone Court, which is in this area that you're referring to. My wife makes a morning walk every day on Mount Tabor and on Elam, and it's dangerous enough where it is. There is more traffic on that since we moved here from Southern California in 2016. And we moved here to this particular area just to get away from the traffic. Now in 2016, I passed maybe 3 cars in a year's time on Elam. I get blocked. I spent 15 minutes getting home on Elam this evening just because of the construction and everything that's going on. It's blocking the whole thing up. You got two schools there, the middle school and the elementary school. Manchester Pike is not big enough for the people that are in there already. You people are doing just what I watched since 1965 to 2015 in Orange County, California. You're building too fast for your infrastructure. You don't have the infrastructure for it. I came tonight from Rutherford to Middle Tennessee was bumper to bumper. I haven't seen that since 91 freeway in Riverside, California. So you need to think about what's going on here. It's not what you want. The neighbors I've talked to in the last 2 days in Taborwood and on Melstone Court, to a person, do not want anything in there. And if you do this to Elam, they're going to want to go off on that one little single part of Mount Tabor, and you can't do it. Scared the heck out of my brother-in-law when he was down here from Michigan. We went down there and a car was coming at us and we both had to go off the road. I don't mind. I'm a retired Marine. I've been off-road more than most of you. But I can tell you right now, it's not a good, safe indication. So you need to rethink this.
Thank you, Mr. Colson. Thank you for your service. Anyone else wishing to speak for the annexation and the plan of services request? All right, seeing none. I want to remind everyone, this is just for the plan of services and the annexation. On the zoning, where we'll talk about traffic and all those other things, everyone will have an opportunity to speak at that point as well. This is just to say we can annex it and that we can provide services to it. That's all this is for. You're still welcome to speak, but everyone's going to get another opportunity at the next public hearing.
I'm Peggy Maples, and I live at 5560 Elam Road. I've been there 8 years, but the Maples have been there forever. A lot to go over, but I simply just want to know, with where I live with the annexation, we'll go over other things later on down in this project, is that what's going to happen to my front yard? When we were here last month, we all came and we all said what we felt that needed to be said, but at the very end, there were people that came up and they said things, and we had no choice, we couldn't be able to say anything back. for our answers, if that's making sense, I'm sorry. But with where I am 69.3 feet from Elam Road. If you come through and you annex that area, I want to know what is going to happen to my home that I have paid off and I have worked hard. We all want to know, what value do we have on our home? What value do we have in our community? So at this point, not to go in any other thing because we're going to wait, I have a petition, a legal petition that has been notarized from Elam Road, West Gum, even down to Magnolia Trace and many other areas. And I can go over, but I know I don't have much time. But I would like to just be noted, this is legal, and
You're
I
welcome.
would like to be,
Yeah, you can give that to Josh for the record there.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to speak for the plan of services and the annexation request? All right, seeing none, we'll close this public hearing and we'll consider on first reading excuse me, let me get to my resolution here. Resolution 22 RPS 28 for the plan of services. We had a couple of questions, Mr. Bomley, on Ms. Maple's question regarding right-of-way, I think is what she was asking about, what would happen to her front yard on the annexation. How much right-of-way is along Elam Road?
I don't recollect what the width is. What we would just be annexing would be the right-of-way of Elam Road. We wouldn't be annexing any of the adjacent private property except the parcel that's been requested.
Okay.
As far as if we would need any additional right-of-way in the future, I don't know the answer to that question right now. That would be speculative on my part. So one of the things that I'll mention that kind of dovetails in with the next item is that part of the zoning plan is that Mr. Swanson, when his development moves down into that area right there, we could put that on the screen, is he'll be required to submit a traffic study with the plans. Before those plans are approved, he'll be required to submit a traffic study, and that traffic study will include recommendations by a licensed traffic engineer for what improvements to Elam Road would be warranted with the specific development that will be proposed with those plans. So at this point, we just simply don't know what those improvements to Elam Road look like.
Would that include, that traffic study would also include access and cemetery locations on being roadways along cemetery locations and those things?
I would think that it would take into account any impacted item regarding traffic and what those improvements would need to be and what rights of way would need to be acquired, if any.
Okay. All right, you have this resolution 22 RPS 28 for plan of services on first reading. Any questions?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we now have resolution 22 A 28, and this is for the annexation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, we'll now move to the public hearing for the zoning of the 151.7 acres.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. This zoning request includes the 0.7 acre parcel that you just considered for annexation, and it also includes the balance of the Parkway Place PID, which stands for Planned Industrial District. Overall, it's about 151 or so acres total, stretching from Joby Jackson Parkway down to Elam Road. You'll see that the yellow area on the map before you is called out as a PID amendment. It's already zoned PID, and Swanson Development is looking to make some modifications to that planned development zoning. and the parcel in blue, because it's being annexed, is labeled differently as to be zoned PID simultaneous with annexation. As I mentioned, the northern most properties in the Parkway Place development are adjacent to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. The only access to the property right now is from Joe B. Jackson Parkway on Richard Reeves Drive and on Treasure Drive. So there are two access points off of Joe B. Jackson Parkway, which both come south into Treasure Drive. The Amazon development is located directly to the northwest of the subject property. The Magnolia Trace subdivision is located to the east of the subject property, in between Parkway Place and Manchester Pike. And there are other estate lot, single-family residential lots in the unincorporated county located along Elam Road and Coldstream Road to the southeast. The request to amend the plan development, there are several items that Mr. Matt Taylor will go over with you in just a moment in his PowerPoint presentation. But just to summarize, they are looking to modify the use chart to add some additional uses in different, what they call regions of the plan development. There are 4 regions total, varying in different levels of intensity with regards to the uses. So they're looking to modify the use chart for the development. They're looking to shift some of the acreage around, just some kind of moving around of those boundary lines for regions 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're looking to add some permitted building materials for the commercial and industrial buildings. And they're looking to add the 0.7 acre parcel into the PID. And what you heard a number of people speak about in the previous public hearing, and what I alluded to in my previous presentation, was the addition of a access point onto Elam Road now that Mr. Swanson has acquired that 0.7 acre parcel, which gives him the ability to provide vehicular access to the south to Elam Road. In consultation with staff, Mr. Swanson has provided that access point to the south. Right now, the plan development in total is greater than a mile long from Joe B. Jackson Parkway down to Elam Road. And it only has ingress and egress to the north, as I mentioned, to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. So what is being proposed in this plan development amendment is to add a private access easement to the south to Elam Road. And access to that private access easement would be restricted to not include shipping and receiving type vehicles. Tractor trailers would be prohibited. And in the pattern book that you have before you, there are some measures that Mr. Taylor and Mr. Swanson proposed to use to enforce that, including putting it in the leases of any tenants that will be occupying any of those buildings, as well as putting signage at the entrance stating that no tractor trailers are permitted. But what this does is it allows for additional passenger traffic. The employees who work in this Parkway Place is quickly becoming an employment center, and it allows the employee traffic an additional means in and out of that development without having to funnel all the traffic north to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. In addition, it does provide another access point for emergency service vehicles. The existing adopted plan has an access point for emergency service vehicles that has to go up the frontage road and kind of back to the east in order to provide emergency service vehicles access from the south. This would be a more direct route for emergency service vehicles from Elam Road without having to use that frontage road. We did hold a neighborhood meeting on this request before the Planning Commission public hearing. It was very well attended, as was the Planning Commission meeting on July the 13th. Most of the public comments that we received during the Planning Commission meeting was in reference to the access onto Elam Road. With that, if there are no questions, I'd like to invite Mr. Taylor up to give a presentation on the plan development amendment. And I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, new and veterans. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm accompanied by Mr. Joe Swanson of the Swanson family, the applicant on this project. It's our privilege to give a brief presentation over our proposed amendments to the Parkway Place PID, or Planned Industrial Development. We've made these proposals to allow for Parkway Place to continue to thrive as a place of employment and commerce in our community, a place where all businesses of different sizes and kinds can call home. As Mr. Blomley said, the site is between 150, 151 acres today. It's highlighted here in yellow. This aerial does have quite a bit of age on it. If you go out there today, there are 2 or 3 existing buildings. There's a large building parallel to the interstate that's well under construction. That's actually a potential future home to an economic development deal. I think that was before council a couple of weeks ago. And then Mr. Swanson's fixing to break ground on several other buildings just north of that. And so it's a very active site, a lot of employment, a lot of commerce going on at this location. Site is currently zoned PID, as Mr. Blomley said. To the west of us is zoned heavy industrial. That is the Amazon facility. To the north is light industrial. That is the interstate warehousing facility. And then to the west, or sorry, to the east and south are still in the Rutherford County unincorporated limits and zoned RM, or medium density residential. So our current plan, as Mr. Blomley said, is made up of 4 different regions. We broke this into 4 regions about 15 years ago to try to keep the most obnoxious uses away from the residential located to the east of our proposed project. And so Region 1 is located along Joby Jackson, which is on the northern side of our project. These uses are intended to be a lot of retail, office type uses, some services. For instance, we've got a veterinary clinic that has bought inside of Region 1 that's fixing to break ground. Region 2, you start to get into more of your industrial users, but still retail, office, and service oriented. And then Region 3 is our most liberal region because it's directly against the interstate. This is where your more obnoxious users are going to be. And then Region 4 is akin to Region 3, except for we've taken out the most obnoxious or most impactful uses because it does directly abut the neighborhood to the east of us. Our proposed plan does not change the concept of those 4 regions. We do slightly adjust some of those areas. We do add a little bit of area, the 0.7 acres where the church used to be, which is located on the southern portion of the property. In the central part of the property, this is where we had shown a detention pond previously. With the construction plans, we're able to adjust and slightly adjust those limits, and so we have clarified that this area should be in Region 3. It most closely mimics that area, makes the most sense there. And as Mr. Blomley said, we have extended the previously shown cul-de-sac through working with staff, made that connection down to Elam Road through a private access easement, shown here in the red. And then we have updated the allowable uses across the site to modernize for some of the zoning ordinance changes, as well as to meet some of the market demands that Mr. Swanson has seen over the last few years of owning this. A little more detail on these. This is the area of the previous church, so it's just under 0.7 acres that we have requested to be added to the PID. That would be split between Regions 3 and Regions 4. This would also be the location of that access point onto Elam Road. Again, this was the detention pond. We have reshaped that pond, made it a little more efficient, a little deeper, and so that area shrunk a little. We also added a pump station in this area, and so we feel like this area is much more appropriate with Region 3 since it abuts directly to Amazon and the interstate. And then the access to Elam Road, again, this was taken out of being a straight cul-de-sac. And we have worked with staff on a general alignment for this to be a private access easement that would connect on down to Elam Road. We do understand through the neighborhood meeting and the planning commission that there is quite a bit of concern of this access point onto Elam Road. And so I've worked with my client as well as staff to come up with a few deterrents. So my client, first of all, for any lease that's entered into inside of this development, he'll write in language that they cannot use this entrance for tractor trailers, whether that's coming or going. Secondly, we will do a little education, if you will. We'll post some signs. I know that seems like a small measure, but the tractor trailer drivers do need to be educated and told where to go, where not to go. So we will construct those. We will also conduct a traffic study once we get to the southernmost portion of the development to see what improvements are needed along Elam Road, whether that's turn lanes, left and right, things like that. And so we would do that. We also believe there are on-site mitigation efforts through the way we design these drive aisles, how tight they are, how close the curves are. Truck drivers do not like tight turns. They tend not to go those directions. So we think there's things on site that we can help mitigate those efforts as well. Furthermore, the city has, through their planning process over several years, has had Manchester Highway slated to be improved to 3 lanes and 5 lanes, depending on where you are, whether you're south or north of Joe B. Jackson. They've also planned to extend Joe B. Jackson in this area, so quite a bit of transportation improvements in the future. Those don't have any definitive dates, I realize that, but it is on the radar in the future. Our public roadway sections have been designed to comply with the city street specs on the width and thicknesses. Our private access easement will design those pavement thicknesses to handle the traffic that we anticipate in those areas as well. As I mentioned earlier, we did tweak the allowable uses. We did this in conjunction with staff. We have kept the spirit of those original 4 regions, and so we're still not introducing obnoxious uses. We are doing things like introducing a brewery. That really was not thought of 15 years ago when this project was originally before you. Your legal department went through quite an extensive ordinance amendment, I think is probably the correct term, on the brewery. We think that's an excellent use in any of these 4 regions, and so we've added that. We've also introduced things like a bakery or a clothing store or a pet shop into Region 2. We do not see that any of those would be obnoxious to the residents adjoining at all. And then we've also went through and worked closely with staff to add some uses inside of Region 3 and 4 that are more industrial in nature. Again, these have been critiqued, went over with staff, put further restrictions on to make sure, again, they don't impact the residents to the east, in keeping with that original spirit of the regions. And then we've added 3 new allowable building materials. These really, quite simply, were not around or were not as popular 15 years ago when we introduced Parkway Place to begin with. So cementitious siding, insulated metal panels, and aggregate stone panels. All those, that technology has developed, has become more popular. They're all quality materials. We're not trying to cheapen these up. We're just trying to provide for some flexibility in architecture of our buildings throughout the development. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the hearing.
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
I have a couple.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just asking these questions so I can get a clear understanding. I know this is true. We definitely need to have safe infrastructure. I understand that. Now, the main entrance that we're talking about, it comes off of Joe B. Jackson, and right now, if we have an accident, that area be so congested, it'll be really very chaotic. And so you all are saying a way to eliminate the tractor trailers is to make another entrance of Joe B. Jackson and not Elam Road. That's right.
And
Right.
so what we're saying, Ms. Scales Harris, is that in working with staff, they identified a desire to have another connection onto Elam Road to take off. We don't want tractor trailers on Elam. Nobody wants that. This is an entrance that would be for vehicular access passenger cars. So if me or you were to work out there, that's how we would, potentially go to work, especially if we lived on the south side of the county. That would be how we enter that facility.
And
But the
right-
tractor trailers would still go north to Joe B. Jackson
Right.
to the entrance you're talking about.
Okay, and right now, Mr. Swanson, he's already had approval for about 150 acres already, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is just a small portion more of what he's asking for. Is any of this in a floodplain area?
No, ma'am, it is not.
And is this going to loop around the interstate?
It will not loop around the interstate, no, ma'am. Everything we're doing is staying on the, I'll call it the east or the north side of 24.
Thank you. You clarified some questions I had. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor. All right, we'll need to open the public hearing. Same rules as the other public hearing. If you're wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Make sure and state your name and address.
My name's Jared Young. I live at 7218 West Gum Road. And just by hearing what this gentleman said, they don't want tractor trailers on Elam Road, and they're willing to put signs at the gate, or the entrance, if you would call it that. But by the time a tractor trailer comes up Elam Road, it's too late. Where are they going to turn around? And tractor trailer drivers from out of state, they're just going to try to find their way to get there. And once they get there, they're going to have to drive over the interstate, keep going on Elam Road, and where are they going to turn around once they figure out they can't go in that? And I get he's saying they need education and all that, but they're going to have to educate every single tractor trailer driver that comes to this location. So I would submit there's going to be a lot of tractor trailers coming up and down Elam Road, even if you widen it 3 lanes or whatever you do. So that's just my view on it, and if he wants to answer that, he's welcome to.
All right, thank you, Mr. Young.
My name's George Nelson. I live at 5704 Elam Road. Just a caveat off on the signage. We have some signs already up there. It says vehicles over this weight are not allowed. Guess what? We have tractor trailers come down our road every single day. They even turn down Mount Tabor Road, which is a 1-lane road, and turn in front of my home. I'm on the corner of Mount Tabor and Elam, and I'm always afraid that they're going to take out my stone wall that I have by my driveway. So signage does not work. Another thing, we talk about we need access for EMS and fire. Why doesn't the developer pay to have a substation built there like Nissan has? Nissan has a fire station and they have an EMS station there. Why don't they do that and then the city pay for the employees and the equipment? That would alleviate having to have EMS come through there to that area. Also, where are you going to get your power from? Someone's got to get power to that whole industrial complex. It's not going to come off of Joe B. Jackson, so where's the power coming from? Where are the easements going to be approved at? Something to think about. Sinkholes. They talked about there's no floodplain there, but there are sinkholes in that area. When you start digging, those sinkholes start to change. I have a sinkhole on my property. My neighbor has a sinkhole on his property. When it rains 4 to 5 inches, those sinkholes fill up and they merge together, and a neighbor that's behind me that has an easement through my property can't get out because their driveway is flooded. It's covered in 12 to 18 inches of water, so they can't get out until the water subsides. So when you start digging, you start changing where the flow of water goes. So some studies need to be made on the environmental impact of all this building that's going on, along with everything, the animals out there. We have tons of wildlife. Where are they going to go? Their whole habitat's being taken away from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Hey, I'm Carla Upton, and I live at 3386 Mount Tabor Road. And irregardless, even if, say, in a perfect world, we did not have tractor trailers going down in through that area, I have seen the Amazon workers who are late to work on Joby Jackson, and they just fly down Joby Jackson, you know, and they are clearly going way over the speed limit so that they can get to work on time. I don't think this is uncommon behavior for any of us when we're late to work and we need to get to the office and we're a couple blocks away. So again, my concern is especially during the early morning school hours, which is when commuters are out because the children are waiting for their school buses, and it takes them a while for the school buses to come and get them, so they have to be out there on the road before 7 o'clock. And I think there's another bus that comes later in the day, at least on Mount Tabor, and goes all around that whole little court area in Elam Road. So we're going to have an increase in traffic, even if it is, quote, just the drivers going to work into that southern part of the industrial complex. They're going to be speeding down that road with children, and we have a number of neighborhood walkers. I know one gentleman said his wife walks out there all the time, and I know there's another lady that I see all the time walking in that area in the mornings. And so the roads are already narrow, and the roads already have enough traffic on them in the mornings and in the evenings during the commute home. So even if we had a perfect world and no tractor trailers went down that area and no big delivery trucks and stuff were allowed down there, I think that the traffic situation would be untenable for the residents and their children and the people who like to walk. I mean, we all moved out into that area well before the city had come up this close. I understand that Murfreesboro is growing, but we moved out there to have a quieter lifestyle. You know, we also moved from out of the area, but my husband's grew up in East Tennessee, and our dream was to come back to Tennessee to enjoy this lifestyle. We love Middle Tennessee. We have deer in our yard. You know, there are many neighbors who have dogs in the neighborhood, and you know, you have dogs, sometimes they get out. You know, we already have from time to time some tragedies where pets have been hit on the road in our neighborhood because of people who are speeding. And so I would submit that this is not a good idea for the quality of life for the people who have been living in this neighborhood for an extended period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Upton.
Jack Clausen, 132 Millstone Court. I see no reason for Elam being used by private or commercial vehicles. EMS, fire, police, yes, they should have the Knox gate put there. I see that as a viable solution for you folks. But employees, you already have a good Joby Jackson width to handle some extra cars, not like Elam, not like Mount Tabor. And you're talking about widening Manchester, which you should have done at least 5 years ago, because when I moved here, they didn't have a Maples subdivision. And that was one of the reasons we picked that house, is because there was no one around us. The next year it was 700 homes. That's at least 700 new cars, if it's only one car per family. And nothing's been done to Manchester Pike yet. So if you're going to do anything, fix up Joby Jackson, fix up Manchester Pike, and put the Knox gate in for emergency services at the south end of this development. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marty Perkins. I live at 3795 Mount Tabor Road, and everything has already been said that really needs to be said. I'm just up here to say my piece. The Elam Road annexation, it affects more than just Elam Road, like as we've heard. Mount Tabor Road, I've put a tape measure on it. It's 14 foot wide. When the county came through to put a stripe down the middle of the road, they had to stop on one end of Elam Road, the end that I live on, putting the stripe down, because if they put a stripe down the middle of the road, what was left was 7 foot. Not enough for a vehicle. So just to tell you how narrow that road really is, everybody's been implying that it is a one-lane road, and if you get a tire off the road, you can pass, but shouldn't have to do that. All the whole entrance thing, it's just more than we can handle. We're already the shortcut right now. If there is heavy rain and floods, the slab at Elam Road and Rutger Road, it gets flooded, all the traffic comes our way. If there is a wreck from Joby Jackson all the way to Manchester, all the traffic comes our way. Like it's been said, you can't stop the tractor trailers. We see them all the time, almost every day. They'll attest to it, my neighbors will. And unless somebody is there to police that on a regular basis, you're not, I don't know if they can't read or they just don't look or care or what, but you cannot stop these folks from getting from point A to point B. The issue was brought up about the school zones. Whitworth, Buchanan Elementary. Elam Road dies straight into Whitworth, Buchanan. Mount Tabor Road, it goes around and comes out by Buchanan Elementary. So the people that already take the back roads, as we're called, from coming out of Amazon, they will come down Elam Road and make a right on Mount Tabor Road. That gets them past at least one school zone. Now only got to go through one at the end of Mount Tabor Road where it goes into Manchester Pike. So the backup, I think about the amount of employees that are going to be coming out of this rear entrance to this industrial park. You know, they're talking about the businesses, the new business that's coming in there that's going to be like 250 employees. And like has already been mentioned, you're going to have first shift running into second shift, not even taking into consideration all of the neighbors that are going to be going and coming to and from work. You've got the school children, the buses. I mean, it's just too much with too little.
Mr. Perkins, that's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone that?
Good evening. My name's Kimberly Lopez. I live at 5602 Elam Road. I'm probably the newest resident in the area. I just bought my home 6 months ago. And you've heard all of the things that we've all discussed within our community. So I'm going to speak from a personal nature because I am the newest resident of that neighborhood. And if you know house prices these days, I spent a lot of money for my home. I've been a long life resident of Rutherford County. And I moved from Smyrna to Murfreesboro for 6 acres of land and a nice home. For what I could have paid, what I paid for my home, I could have bought a very nice, big home, brand new, with little land. But I moved to Elam Road to have land with my 4 other members of my household. This is my place to thrive. I know businesses need to thrive, but this is my place to thrive and my family's. We have a thriving horse pasture business that will be affected if Elam Road is widened I have probably on my side of the road, I have the longest length of yard that will be taken if it is expanded beyond the 2 lanes that it is. It will take every one of my trees that are old growth. It will require my fence to be moved, and I have a perk site within about 60 feet of the road that I will probably lose, which affects my home values and everybody else's in our neighborhood. And I'm curious as to why the traffic study has to wait. I don't understand all the legal things, but I need to know what's going to happen to my land. What I have worked for, my largest investment that I will ever make, as many of the people in our neighborhood are also feeling. So that is, I'd like to know what's going to happen to me and to all the other people on that section of Elam Road, all sections of Elam Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Locust. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, Peggy Maples at 5560 Elam Road. I would like to be granted an extension. I have a lot of facts that I'd like to go over, if I may.
Ms. Elam, I can't do that. If I did that for you, I'd have to do that for everyone.
Okay, but let my time start now. Okay, I have facts. So let's go over facts really quick. So hold on, we're going to a roller coaster ride. 1, here's you an 18-wheeler. We have a total of 36 of these in a month. This is proof. I have 16 cameras in front of my house like Fort Knox. I see everything, and it sees everything. It comes through. Okay, that is not his first time coming through, by the way. And these can be submitted over to you. 2, let's talk about sinkholes. We have a total of 14 sinkholes that is confirmed on here, and you do not have it on file with the county because I have had the engineers come out. There's only 1 that's on file. The rest are not on file, and they are not noticed. And it also has the depth on them, too, of how deep they are. Okay. 3. In the last 2 years, or maybe less, we have had drones come in our area. We've had them behind our barns, our houses, our fields. And they have been so close that we could see the cameras. We've had 2 police reports and 16 farmers that wanted to shoot them out of the sky. There you go. So at this point, I asked our certain developer. He admits it was his. We were not notified of this privacy. We were not notified what was behind our house, behind our windows, and behind our barns. 3. Now let's talk about, again, our retention pond. If you have that map and you can pull up, I would like to go back to that retention pond really quick, ladies and gentlemen, because this, again, is going from the retention pond that's currently there at this point. If you could come pull that up, please, for everybody to see it. And 2, it's going to 24 back behind the Maples and over to Elam Road, where it currently has cones right there. You and I both know if you've been on Elam Road or One Man Bridge, when it rains, it floods. We don't need your party on our party because it hurts us. Again, sinkholes in our area. When you develop, you put damage on our homes and our land. Stop it. There you go. Number 4, let's talk about safety. If you've got a film to come up on the bridge, I've got pictures of that. I do want to make a note since I'm on TV. When I did this, I was not on personal property. I was in the center of the road, and these were trucks coming and going as fire trucks. Okay, 1, we have a local volunteer fire department right down the road on Elam Road. Now, we have what it's called a regular truck, and then we have what it's called a tanker. When they're coming and going, you have a bridge right there. On that bridge, it's a blind spot. Who's been on Elam Road? Raise your hand. That's it? Okay.
Ms. Maples, I'm going to give you an extra 30 seconds.
Thank you. I'm going quick here. We're going over this bridge right
30 seconds.
We're going over this bridge right here, and we have people that go 80 miles per hour. These trucks, if you're a city or annex, they cannot pull out of that spot without someone getting hurt or one of your families out there. Okay, I do have pictures to submit on that. Now, also, again, back in 2015, TDOT did a report.
Ms. Maples, thank you so much. All right, anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, I'm Randall Upchurch, and my wife and my mom, we live at 5838 Elam Road, and we're concerned about many things, as they've all mentioned, but one of the things is definitely safety. Elam Road is a small area, small road, and it just, even if you widen it, it's only going to cause more traffic than what we've already got. And we definitely don't need any more. And on top of that, if it ends up getting annexed, then that means that they're going to probably take part of the property. If they do that, then we're more likely going to have to pay city and county taxes, which doesn't really sound correct if you think about it. Okay, if you go into a store and you get a whole pie and you pay for that, a whole pie, but yet you take half of that and they want you to pay as much as if you're getting a whole, then that's the same thing as taking part of the property of ours out there and having to add city tax to it for something that we don't even no longer have anymore because it's been taken from us. So we don't want the extra taxes. We don't need them. We got enough going on as it is. And like I say, the big thing is the safety. We got enough traffic already. And I grew up out there. I've been out there since I was 9 years old. And we just don't need any more of the traffic than what we've already got, especially when you're talking 18-wheelers. And on top of that, I have a mom that has dementia that I mentioned before. If by chance they do widen it, that puts the road that much closer to the house. If she were to by chance get out of the house, that means she's got that much closer access to the road. And if she were to get out there and get hit, then there's my mom gone. And so I would love for y'all to not only consider everything else that everybody else has mentioned, but the big thing of safety, not just for everybody else, but my mom especially, who's 82 years old. So there's a lot of thinking, I'm sure y'all, but y'all are here to help us and support us, and we'd appreciate it if y'all would, go bear with us and listen to our concerns and vote for our way of what we're talking about to stop this.
Thank you, Mr. Upchurch.
My name's Randall Patterson. I live at 5807 Elam Road. And I want to talk just a little bit. I mean, everybody's, pretty much said everything, but concerning the traffic, and I know that Mr. Taylor and Mr. Swanson has talked about putting in lease and writing in his leases. I'm EVP of operations for Steel Technologies. I got 2 facilities here in the county. We're probably dumping 2,500 tractor trailers a month on the highway. We deal with traffic every day. I talk to the traffic engineers from here at the city of Murfreesboro. We have issues on MyTech Drive out here to where trucks, they won't listen how they're supposed to come in. Smyrna, Tennessee, I talk to the town manager there probably daily. So I'd really like to know how they're going to control that. I don't think the lease is going to work. We deal with trucking companies all over the country. We're probably some 70,000 trucks a year company-wide. It's a difficult situation to try to control them, I'm telling you. And I don't think that you're going to do it with signage. You can look at Florence Road, currently down in close to our facility behind Nissan. Look at MyTech Drive. We're dealing with that on a daily basis. And the lease is definitely not going to work. So need to know more about that. Traffic's a big thing. Tractor trailers is very concerning. So just wanted to talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello, Mayor McFarland and City Council. I'm Angie McFarland Kleino. I've lived in Rutherford County all of my life. I'm a local girl. My family are country people. Some of you know that. I agree with everything that my neighbors have said. So I'm going to hit some of those points again. People have moved to my neighborhood. They've moved there to be in the country. Elam is a beautiful country road. It is not needed to take care of traffic from Joe B. Jackson. I'm on Joe B. Jackson off and on all day. And the only time I see Joe B. Jackson backed up is when there's accidents from Joe B. to exit 89 or vice versa. And that's a period, and they hit us on Manchester Highway, Mount Tabor, my road, 5942 West Gum Road. We have 18-wheelers today. 2 18-wheelers were right with me on Elam Road. And I had to pull over to the side this morning to let the 18-wheeler pass. I'm concerned. I am willing to accept. You've got our life in your hands right now. I'm willing to accept an emergency exit there. They already have roads going through to Joe B. Jackson from back there. I even rode back part of that today and looked at it. They say they're going to have around 200, 250 employees coming in. But you know some of the other employees from the other companies are going to be cutting through. Even if we can keep the 18-wheelers off, they're going to be coming through. I have been told by 5 sources that this long-term plan, that if you can pass this Elam Road issue, that you plan, and I don't know whether long-term is 5 years or 10 years, to bring Elam Road into the city and that area into the city. I'm concerned about that. There is a plan to take Epps Mill, the road from Manchester through Epps Mill across the interstate. There is a plan to widen that. And there's going to be, across from Love's truck place, there's going to be another huge trucking place over there. The people over there that I've talked with are excited about that expansion plan. So you're going to have a huge road down at Epps Mill going to the interstate. You're widening Manchester Highway. And Joe B. Jackson handles the traffic beautifully. I'm concerned about our traffic. Also, I'm concerned about our schools that are in there and the children getting hurt and the traffic coming through. I'm concerned about the 2 cemeteries. If you widen Elam Road, you're getting into people's yards that they bought to have land, or you're going to affect the cemeteries. And I would be curious to know what the laws are about the cemeteries. One of those is an African-American cemetery. I'm not sure about the other one in front of New Vision Satellite Place. I ask you, don't take our country life away. I've been out in the neighborhood. I know the neighbors. I have made it a point to visit and get to know the neighbors. When I lived in Chattanooga 32 years, came back home, and I made a point to get to know the neighbors. I'm called the Blueberry Lady, and I used to stick little things in their mailboxes every once in a while just to let them smile and know that somebody loved them. They all want to keep it. I only know 2 people that want to keep it, let this happen. They are developers, and they're friends of mine. So they were honest with me, and I love them.
Ms. Klein, thank you so much.
Okay, I want to keep it country.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak? All right, see you, one more. Okay.
Joe Swanson, Jr., 3614 Manchester Pike. Just a couple of things that I think that I can answer. Power was mentioned. It is in. Sinkholes, the normal course of business is to fill those in and then expand your detention pond in order to take off whatever runoff would have been going into those sinkholes. I have cameras out there now. I have a wire crossed the access from Elam Road. It's supposed to be put up and taken down each day as those subcontractors come and go. It's concrete and plumbing right now, and maybe a little bit of excavation, but the people building Logistics Road now have the curb and gutter down, so once it goes black, we won't be accessing that from that area unless it's an emergency for some reason. The drones, I will speak with my subcontractor about that. I do use drones. It helps keep me in the office so that I don't have to go out. I do drones about once a week on each project. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak for or against? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And we have the majority of the questions that we have. We had questions on power, EMS, and sinkholes. The project that's under construction is already approved and has been approved for some time. So really what we're looking at is, I think, traffic. The one thing I would say, I think Mr. Upchurch made a comment on taxes on property taken. We're not, I can't speak for other council members, but the state law changed in 2008, 2009 on annexation, and we cannot go grab property for annexation or annex your property and charge you taxes with no services. That just can't happen. Everything else is on traffic. It'd be interesting to hear the overall plan for Elam Road, what the Elam Road plan shows in our major thoroughfare plan, just to get an update on all that, and then other council members if you've got questions.
Mayor McFarland, the major transportation plan, this particular segment of Elam Road does not include improvements to this section of Elam Road. As you can see on the screen before you, I think Mr. Huddleston is, if I may confer with him just real quick.
I've got to run the restroom meeting. I'll be right back.
Surprise.
Your face, Matthew, was the best.
Oh, that was surprising. The improvements on our major transportation plan to Elam Road are on the opposite side of I-24. There is a realignment project with the Butler Drive Elam Road intersection. And if you bear with me just a moment, I can pull this up on our website. You can see on the map before you, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. Elam Road, west of I-24, you can see the realignment of Elam and Butler to pull that intersection further away from the interchange on-ramps. We'll be looking at some of those improvements in conjunction with the proposed Buc-ee's. And then you'll see the improvements to Elam Road heading south on our major transportation plan down to the 90-degree turn in Elam Road. And I believe that's, Mr. Huddleston, is that three lanes? So 3 lanes south of the proposed Buc-ee's down to that 90-degree turn. Glad to have Mr. Huddleston and Mr. McKnight as a safety net.
Mr. Bromley, there were several comments about Manchester Pike being expanded. That's obviously a state road, not one of our roads. Is that on the schedule? Do you know how far out that is?
I don't think there's any scheduled improvements. It's on our major transportation plan, but ultimately, with that being a state route, the TDOT controls the timing of that.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Let me ask a question, because one of the things that kept coming up was the tractor-trailer traffic on that road. And the 2 offers were that the lease or something related to their lease would be notified about truck traffic, no delivery truck. And the, all of a sudden it just jumped out of my brain.
The signage?
Yeah, signage. If they don't work, what alternatives, I mean, if this doesn't mediate this problem, what things can be done?
Mr. Shacklet, it would be a condition of approval in their zoning plan, and at that point it becomes a zoning enforcement matter of our department attempting to police that and working with the property owners and the businesses to help to bring that into compliance.
So, police department pulling people over?
I don't know that they would pull people over, because I think it's a zoning matter. It's not a matter of them violating a traffic law that's on our books. I think it would be, we might enlist their services in helping us to track those tractor trailers if they're abusing that entrance. But ultimately, it would be a zoning enforcement matter that we would have to work with the planning department would have to work with the business owners there and Mr. Swanson to bring it into compliance.
And could you speak a little bit to the gate that was offered as an option to close that gate? Or I forgot what the name
Knox
was.
Gate.
Knox Gate.
Yeah, so I believe what he's referring to is what we would normally consider like a Yelp mode emergency gate, where there's an entrance for emergency traffic only. When the siren goes off, the gates are triggered and allows emergency vehicles to access the property. I think gating provides some logistical issues with regards to the passenger traffic, and so one of the things that we are trying to do, in addition to creating a good direct route for emergency service vehicles, is also to disperse the passenger traffic that is going to the Parkway Place development. For example, all of that traffic has to head north. So if you live in Coffee County, or if you live in southeastern Rutherford County, if you work in Parkway Place, then you have to go north to Joby Jackson Parkway, and then back over to Manchester Pike, and then down, adding traffic and friction to those roadways instead of being able to take a more direct route to your ultimate destination. And so what we're trying to do is to provide additional ways to disperse traffic. This development is, at this point, is probably a quarter of the way built out. There is the large warehouse that's under construction right now. Mr. Swanson has 3, I think 100,000 square foot industrial buildings that have been approved by the Planning Commission. And so with all of that traffic, one of the things that we know from experience and that we know from our guiding principles and our subdivision regulations and our design guidelines is that connectivity is key, and being able to disperse traffic to minimize friction on one roadway by granting vehicles the ability to go in multiple different directions.
Matt Taylor. What about the level of service on Joby Jackson at the interchange of I-24?
So I believe at the interchange during peak times it falls to a level D right now. I would say the rest of the time it is probably an A or a B. It's pretty free flow, but at the interchange during peak times it's at a D.
Can you explain to the audience what D is?
So D is not quite failing, but it's getting pretty close to failure at that point, and so I think that's why staff has expressed the desire to push some of this vehicular traffic back to Elam because it does provide that local road option. Elam Road is very much, I would say, a collector type road feeding a couple of arterials, and so I think that is why.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? All right, we need to consider on first reading ordinance 22 OZ 28.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Brown, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Averwater? Aye. Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 21, rezoning property along Franklin Road. Mr. Blomley.
Mayor McFarland, our next public hearing is for property located along the north side of Franklin Road. It is the Smith property. It is located directly to the east of the Melton property, which was rezoned late last year. This is an almost identical rezoning request to the rezoning of the Melton property last year. So there's actually two parcels in question. There's the Smith property and the Zachariah property. The Smith property is requested to be rezoned from RS-15 to commercial fringe along the frontage, and RS-15 to RS-8 for the balance of the property. That's the area in green. Now the Zachariah property, which is the smaller property, in between the assisted living facility here and the Smith property here, is requested to be zoned commercial fringe along the frontage, and the remainder of that property is to remain its current zoning RS-15, at least for the time being. We've had discussions with the property owner about potential land uses for the rear of his property and potential zoning requests, but he is not ready to make a zoning request at this time. The surrounding land uses in the area, the Blackman Oaks East and the South subdivision are located to the north, zoned RS-12. As I mentioned, the Melton property directly to the west is zoned RS-8 and CF, which is identical to this request. Directly across the street is zoned commercial fringe, and that is a commercial development where the Toots is located. Of course, you have the intersection of Rucker Lane to the south, as well as the Market at Victory Village planned unit development where the Publix is located. To the east of the subject property along Fortress Boulevard is the crossings at Victory Station Assisted Living Facility. Staff, in meeting with the applicants, as we did with the Melton family, or the applicants for the Melton property, felt that it was important to have that commercial zoning along the frontage to enable commercial development to continue along Franklin Road, but to transition from that commercial zoning to the north to the single-family zoning in the Blackman Oaks East and Trafalgar Square subdivisions. City of Murfreesboro's existing future land use map, the one that was adopted in 2017, shows both of these properties, both the Smith and Zachariah property, in the general commercial land use character. This was formulated and adopted in a time when we had more big box retailers, and we simply don't see a whole lot of the commercial users that would need the depth of commercial land that is the depth of this property. So in our proposed amendment to the future land use map, you'll see that we mirror actually what their request is. And so when we met with them, we worked with them to come up with a request that was consistent with the future land use map that we're proposing and that's pending before council right now. You'll notice that the frontage is zoned commercial, or is proposed for general commercial land use character, and the rear is auto urban residential land use character. The RS8 zoning is actually on the less dense side of the auto urban residential land use character. So the CF and RS8 zoning requests are consistent with the proposed future land use map. Staff supports the rezoning request for the following reasons. RS8 zoning district permits single-family detached uses on lots of at least 8,000 square feet, and the houses would be a minimum of 75% masonry materials of brick, stone, or cementitious siding to minimize the potential for fire damage. Any future development proposal will include a road connection to Franklin Road across from Rucker Lane and along the north extending to Fortress Boulevard. And the road connection at Rucker Lane will also connect to the north to the Garcia Boulevard as well. The portion of the property proposed for CF zoning is consistent with the general commercial land use designation, and the portion of the property proposed for RS8 zoning is not consistent with the adopted future land use map, but it is consistent with the proposed future land use map, and staff believes it's an appropriate transition from the commercial zoning along state route that is Franklin Road to the single-family residential uses to the rear. We held a public hearing on this matter on July the 13th before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission recommended its approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Taylor is present. He is representing Beezer Homes, who is the applicant. It's my understanding Beezer Homes has a contract on the property and is the residential developer looking to develop the RS8 portion.
Any questions, Mr. Plumley?
Is there any multifamily in that at all?
No, sir. The request is for RS8, so single-family residential lots of minimum of 8,000 square feet, and that would equate to roughly 4 dwelling units per acre.
What's the total acreage?
The total acreage is 19.5 that's proposed for RS8 and 6 acres proposed for CF. And I don't know if Mr. Taylor has worked up a preliminary layout to find out approximately how many units he could get. I'd say max would probably be about 80 units on that acreage.
In the green? Or are we talking green and purple?
Just the green. The purple is RS15. The property owner has no development intentions of the purple at this time. I think we expect to see a rezoning request at some point in the future, but he does not have he lives in the house on that property and does not intend to develop it in the immediate future.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Plumley? All right, we'll need to hold the public hearing for this rezoning request of 25.5 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come up. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll now consider on first reading ordinance 22 OZ 26. Any questions?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we'll move to item 22. This is rezoning property along Wilkinson Pike. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our final public hearing of the evening is for the rezoning of 10.8 acres located along the south side of Wilkinson Pike. It's the Hale property. Toll Brothers developers have a contract on the property to develop a residential development on the property. And, the request is to rezone the property from RS15, MU, GDO1, GDO2, to PRD and GDO1 and GDO2. So the area in the red is what is currently zoned MU and GDO1, and what's in the blue is currently zoned RS15 and GDO2, and they are looking to rezone all of it to PRD with no modifications to the GDO overlays that are on the property right now. Directly to the north of the subject property are some single-family residential lots in the county. To the east of the subject property is the Villages of Murfreesboro Assisted Living Facility. To the south and to the west of the subject property is the Clary Park development, which is was approved last year. The zoning was approved, and the Planning Commission can attest we've started to see quite a number of plans come through on the Clary Park mixed-use development for apartments, townhomes, and a number of the commercial out parcels. We're seeing plans for those as well. The request to zone this to PRD is for a development that will contain 26 single-family residential single-family residential detached units and 77 single-family residential attached units. The density overall is a little under 10 dwelling units per acre. The future land use map in the adopted Murfreesboro 2035 comprehensive plan shows that the property is recommended for an urban commercial mixed use land use character. The urban commercial mixed use land use character is what we would normally see in a downtown, in an area that has an integrated number of uses of residential, commercial, office. So this request is not consistent with that urban commercial mixed use land use character of the adopted 2035 plan. In the proposed 2035 plan, it shows this area as employment generating. Employment generating, it allows for residential uses if those residential uses trail employment generating type uses. That would be office uses, high-tech uses, things of that nature. So it's not consistent with either the adopted or the proposed future land use map. However, the proposed future land use map was the paradigm for that area did change a little bit with the adoption of the Clary Park PUD. With a large portion of Clary Park being zoned for residential purposes. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on July the 13th and voted to recommend approval. Mr. Matt Taylor has a PowerPoint presentation he would like to give to you. I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Blomley, Mayor, Council, Matt Taylor of SEC. I'm accompanied tonight by Mr. Michael Burton of the Toll Brothers, the applicant on the project. I'm here tonight to present to you what we've called Toll Brothers at Gateway Center, PRD. So the site, as Mr. Blomley says, just under 11 acres in size on the southern side of Wilkinson Pike, highlighted here in the pink and white. This site was the location of the Hale family for a number of years. It's been vacant for approximately 3 years now. There are two structures on the site, one of those being that existing house and others an out structure. Both of those will be removed with this project. The site today is currently zoned mixed use and RS-15, as Mr. Blomley said. The areas surrounding us are a mixture of mixed use as well as PUD, and then Rutherford County RM to the north. This is looking at the site across, I believe I'm standing on Wilkinson Pike here. This is the existing house itself. This is a house to the north across Wilkinson Pike. This is the assisted living directly east of our project. And then this is looking west back toward the Chamber of Commerce along Wilkinson Pike. This is where we would be installing our turn lanes that I'll mention later. So the plan itself, as I said, is proposed to be a PRD, or a planned residential district, to allow for 104 residential homes. I do think it's important to note that today the site's zone mixed use in RS-15, so we're not asking for any extra density. This is essentially the same density that could be constructed today, except for those would have to be apartments and commercial. We're asking for sale townhomes and detached homes. So I think that is very important. As Mr. Blomley said, it is a mixture of townhomes. We have 77 of those proposed, and then 27 detached proposed. We have a abundance of green space scattered throughout the site, just over 2.5 units to the acre. We have purposefully planned our detached homes along Wilkinson Pike and Willow Oak Trail, so that whenever you're driving by on those public streets, that is what you see. Plan itself, we feel like, is a very heavily focused design project. We've done this by utilizing all alley-loaded homes, high-quality architecture, raised foundations, and a heavy internal and external streetscape plan. And so we've done that by proposing and utilizing on-street parking, raised crosswalks, sidewalks throughout, and street trees. All of our streets, whether alleys or regular streets, will be private streets. And so all of our owners here will be a member of an HOA that will be managed by a third-party association. That HOA will maintain these streets as well as all the common areas internal to the project. All of our homes here, whether they're the townhomes or the detached, will be sold through an HPR, so that all external areas are maintained by one entity. Our townhomes highlighted here are all 3 stories. There'll be a minimum of 1,800 square feet. Each one will have a usable front porch. Again, a 2-car rear entry garage. We've based this architecture on the brownstone architecture, which has been very popular with the city. We have further reinforced that brownstone effect with the raised foundations along these streets. That's a very important design element in the gateway. And then we're utilizing all brick, stone, and fiber cement board on our building materials throughout the entire project. That's consistent between the townhomes and the detached homes here as well. So here's an example of the front elevation, and you can see that enhanced side elevation on this. You'll see that these all step back and forth, at least 2 feet between each unit. All the roof lines have good undulations. Quality materials, you can see the front porch and the side porch. You can see the detailing around the windows. So a very quality architecture, very quality project as a whole. The rear will have brick or stone all the way through the second floor. Each townhouse will have a usable porch on the back off that second floor. All the garage doors will be decorative in nature, and we've also planned for decorative lighting at strategic locations to further add to the architecture. A couple of side elevations. The detached homes located to the north and south ends of the project, highlighted here, are 27 of these again. These will be a minimum of 2,300 square feet in size. They will continue to be rear load. The materials will be consistent with the other townhomes. Again, usable porches, 2-car driveways, raised foundations, very consistent and cohesive throughout. The front elevations, here's some examples of those. You can see very attractive. The rears are going to mimic the townhomes with that decorative garage door and lighting. We will introduce a man door on the back of these. and then sample of the side elevation. Amenities, we will plan for entry signage at each of our entrances, one off of Wilkinson Pike, one off of Willow Oak Trail. We've also got berming and buffering along Wilkinson Pike to mimic what was constructed along Clary Park's frontage. And then we've got 2 larger amenity spaces planned throughout. We've kind of broken the project up in thirds. So the area to the north is our larger amenity area. This will be house a very architecturally distinct pavilion. This will be what you see as you come in off of Wilkinson Pike, so it's very important characteristics there. Flanking that to the east is also going to be kind of a plaza courtyard area where we're going to commission a piece of art. We want to engage Middle MTSU's art department to commission that, maybe some sort of rotating type feature there. We have located an abundance of landscaping as well as seating areas around this feature. And then outside of those 2 areas, we've also planned for some light recreational areas, if you will, foosball, ping pong, cornhole areas, really just social areas to get people out of their house, meet their neighbor, develop friendships, or further reinforce those. Then we've also got some unstructured play area on the western side of this. It's where you can go have a picnic, play a little wiffle ball, a little soccer, whatever your heart desires. The southern piece is a little more intimate in nature, so we introduced some fire pits with some seating areas here to make this a little different. We've also brought the cornhole up to that as well. And then we've got some bike racks as well as some open play area here as well. And continued the seating. Access, we do have 2 access points. One of those is on Wilkinson Pike. We'll be constructing a full complement of turn lanes here, left and right turn lanes in. And their other is going to be onto Willow Oak Trail that will be constructed by Clary Park. We will complete the streetscape plan along Willow Oak Trail in compliance with the city's streetscape master plan. Then we've also got a strong internal streetscape that I mentioned earlier. So this is kind of a snapshot of what that will look like. The buildings themselves become part of that streetscape with that shallow front setback on the streets, the very neighborhoody feel. And then we'll utilize raised crosswalks at a couple of our crosswalks internal to the development to further enhance and promote that walkability. And then we've scattered the on-street parking throughout the development to be utilized for visitor parking, be convenient to all the owners here. Landscaping, we'll have an abundance of landscaping. We'll have a landscape berm or a buffer on the east side where we adjoin the assisted living. Then we're going to continue that berm and buffer along Wilkinson Pike that I mentioned earlier. And then we'll have a strong foundation planning program as well as screening of any of our HVAC or mechanical equipment and transformers around the entire site. Here's a sample palette of the type of trees and shrubs that we'll utilize. Drainage, we did host a neighborhood meeting before the Planning Commission public hearing, and drainage was a large topic of that conversation. And so we did take a little extra time to put together this exhibit. We will utilize all underground detention for this facility. Today, approximately 9 acres drains to the north toward Wilkinson Pike, and that leaves about 2 acres that drains kind of to the south and east. We're going to completely reverse that, and so post-development, after we're done building here, the area in blue will be discharged back into a pipe that was stubbed out from the assisted living facility, and that will go back to the southeast. That will go through a couple of stormwater features after hours, so it's a much more capable system. This does follow and is consistent with the city's stormwater master plan that they've been utilizing in this area for the past 15 or 20 years. So I'll be happy to answer any questions now or after the hearing.
Any questions, Mr. Taylor?
More for a sewage question, what would be there in that area from a connection capacity?
So
what would remain, assuming this comes online?
So my understanding is, because we've got our sewer will serve letter, so that was one of the first things that we did when we started looking at this project. There is an abundance of capacity within this basin. I'm sure Mr. Gore, he's still here, he could probably tell you down to the gallon, but I'm not as smart as Mr. Gore and don't claim to be. So, but we do have a will serve letter, so we've already confirmed that capacity.
Okay.
Mr. Gore, do you want to answer the capacity in the area?
How many gallons are left?
This is where I look to Valerie Smith and trust her implicitly, the fact that she reviewed this, and if she's issued a will serve letter, then we have the capacity for it. So I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
But we do an annual report, just to let you know, Councilman Maxwell, that we do go in and we have about 17 basins that we identify how many remaining connections we have within that basin. It's not to say we don't have some constrictions within each basin on occasion, but we do actually keep the number of connections. So all these things that you approve, they get booked. And we take those off of those remaining connections and then calculate the new connection availability on each annual report. So that'll become something you can look forward to in January. We'll have our third annual report.
Mr. Taylor, could you talk about how solid waste is, how you're handling solid waste?
Yes, sir. Since these are private streets, we've elected to forego city trash pickup, so it'll all be private trash pickup, and so that can will be stored inside the garage except for on trash day, and so that'll be written into our restrictive covenants. We've already got our nosy neighbor picked out that's going to make everybody put that back in, so we feel very confident in that.
That's planning. That's good planning.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll need to hold a public hearing for this rezoning request of 10.8 acres. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider on first reading ordinance 22 OZ 27. I want to make a comment. We've had a lot of conversation as a council over the last 2 or 3 months on HPRs and single family blending in with attached townhomes. In my opinion, this is a good example of how it can be done correctly with open space, rear-loaded garages, and some of the projects that we've been seeing come across are nowhere near like this. It's just crammed in for density, and so I want to say to the staff and then the applicant and the engineering team, this is a good example. I think if we show other projects of how it can be done correctly, not just as an afterthought to get single family and attached single family put together.
I would like to give kudos to Ms. Green, who's sitting back there, who worked diligently with Mr. Taylor to get a really good product here.
I mean, you can, not a lot of people would know, but just the offsets in the attached, where it's just not a row of front doors, they're offset, so it gives some definition. It's a good looking project.
Looks good.
So moved.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Planning Commission recommendations for public hearings. All right, so we have none. All right, we'll move to.
I'm not that fast. We have a grand total of 1 to schedule, and we're recommending a date of October the 20th for that 1 public hearing.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, thanks to the planning staff for bringing these projects tonight. All right, we'll move to Town Creek funding reallocation. Mr. Huddleston.
Good evening, Mayor McFarland, members of council, and to Mayor and Vice Mayor, congratulations on your reelection, and to our new council members, Maxwell and Averwater. We look forward to working with you in your time with the City Council. So tonight we do have just a quick update on the Town Creek daylighting project, and funding reallocation, and so I'm going to ask for what we're recommending first, give you a little update, and then remind you of what I'm asking for. So tonight we're asking to basically reverse the order of funding that we had originally proposed on this, and to pay for property acquisition out of general fund and defer the construction of the improvements to Town Creek, both Phase 1 and 2, from the ARPA funds that were designated for this. A little background tonight, Town Creek was placed inside a large culvert system in the 1950s and 60s with Broad Street construction and also with the Bottoms Urban Renewal Project. We experienced a critical failure in 2007 near the KFC property, about a 9-month repair on that, and finally got the pipe repaired. We did a little cost analysis for what it cost us to do that emergency repair, extrapolated that over the length of the Town Creek system, and thought we wanted to consider maybe a different way than remove and replace for that in the future. For some further inspections revealed additional concerns in the downstream sections that we continue to manage and monitor that, and blocking some additional areas of the parking lot over that Town Creek culvert out. So we approach this as a daylighting or restoring the natural flow of the creek in lieu of replacing the actual culverts. Phase 1 of that, which is Murphy Springs to Church Street, is closely tied and integrated to permitting, and Cherry Lane Phase 2 for stream and wetland credits, and then Phase 2 was a critical or a big ideal element from the Historic Bottoms plan and has been closely associated and tied to the Historic Bottoms redevelopment and revitalization plan. So earlier, city staff recommended ARPA funding at a $9 million total, and if you'll recall, we received a $24.1 million ARPA allocation and recommended Town Creek improvements as $9 million. What we have since realized as we work through the ARPA process that purchasing real estate while allowable was a bit of a challenge in ARPA, and the guidance and recommendations tend to lead us more toward paying for construction and constructed improvements and enhancements, and so that led us to the recommendation to flip the funding. What I have before you tonight is a preliminary concept plan. We engaged the services of Reagan Smith and Associates and Griggs and Maloney, and this is the ink is still wet on this plan as they just shared it with us this week. So we want to share that with you to make it part of our presentation tonight. But this shows Phase 1 of Town Creek here in this area, and then also the Phase 2 work which we proposed here, giving that improvement into that Town Creek corridor and restoring the natural flow of that stream. It also includes some enhancements, some placemaking as we call it, to provide shade, to provide comfort, to perhaps encourage things to see and things to do. This is still a concept plan, but it's a much closer fine-tuned concept plan than what we started with the Bottoms planning study. This actually has property boundaries in it, utility considerations, the width of area we have to work, the lack of sidewalk of Broad Street, and those sorts of things, helping us box in this project and put some better definition on it. And then what you would see here is a relationship between Town Creek and, say, for example, on the left, the frontage on Broad Street. And so as you move from left to right across these profiles, you'll see that we have proposed improvements on Broad Street, pedestrian bridge, walkway, water level accesses, perhaps development pushed up close to the creek, perhaps food and beverage and entertainment and dining opportunities that would provide those enhancements to Town Creek to activate that corridor in a way that was identified in the Historic Bottoms planning study. Here you have on the left-hand side some opportunities that our design team and city staff saw with the daylighting of Town Creek, but we also identified some constraints and concerns
I won't go over those in detail with you, but just to know that that was in your agenda package, to provide some information on some things that are on our mind, both on the opportunity side and on the constraint side. And then finally, just some examples of some of the projects we looked at for inspiration. So these are projects that our design team or city staff's familiar with, and we've provided you some examples of how those are certainly manicured and hard-edged improvements with a lot of finish. And then there are also some areas in there where it's a more natural setting, more stream-like with pools and riffles and streamside vegetation. And those will be the concepts and ideals we'll continue to work on as we move into the design. So funding reallocation tonight, so phase 2, what we're recommending tonight is phase 2, property acquisition and demo to be funded from the general fund. Previously, you authorized us to proceed with the property acquisition from ARPA, so tonight I'm asking that you would just allow us to switch that level of funding to the general fund. And with that approved, we'll bring back a budget amendment as I reviewed that with our budget director, Ms. Tucker. And then phase 1 and 2 construction would include the $9 million ARPA participation, stormwater items that would be enhancements that would be added to help there would be valued at $1 million. And then we've identified some water and sewer utility improvements and relocations that need to be made, and we propose to work with Mr. Gore and the utility side to get those improvements and enhancements funded. Hickerson Drive modifications, which is a public road, we've identified some improvements that we believe would really support the Town Creek concept, proposing to fund $750,000 from state street aid. Underground electric, which we want to do to create the Wright streetscape and elements there. We estimate that at $1 million, propose that from general fund, and then about a $1 million general contingency. Now, we're not asking you to allocate those monies tonight. I only present those to you as some budget estimates, and we'll bring any future items to you as we would under normal business for your authorization for the exact funding, whether that be a construction contract, a consulting contract, utility cost, and those sorts of things. We'd bring those back to you for the specific funding value. So tonight, again, a recommendation is to fund property acquisition from the general fund and to authorize the city manager and the city staff to work on settlements and payment adjustments that may be necessary as a part of the negotiations with those property owners. We'll follow the federal property acquisition and city policy and guidance that we've used historically on that. If we go above those levels, we'll bring those property acquisitions back to you for your confirmation, but we plan to just stay within the boundaries that we've previously established for right-of-way and property acquisitions. And then the general fund, as we talked about, gives us a lot more flexibility for funding, especially in property acquisition. Gives us some flexibility to deal with the remnants, maybe provide those to be assembled for other assembly, provide leases on them. Federal funding typically involves short-term and sometimes perpetual federal restrictions on how we use those lands. And then the ARPA guidance certainly directed us more toward construction than property acquisition. So that's our recommendation tonight. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
We're not losing any ARPA funds. We're just redirecting them to another.
Yes, Mr. Shacklet, we're really just changing the order in which we propose to spend those funds and the things that we were going to spend them on. And so property acquisition will now come from the general fund, where we're going to supplement the project from general fund and stormwater and some other funding as well.
There's no other questions. I will move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Olson. All right, we have a subrecipient agreement with the Volunteer Behavioral Health. Karen.
Mayor, Council, this is an easy one, no PowerPoint and no public hearing. We are asking Council to approve a subrecipient agreement between Volunteer Behavioral Health and Murfreesboro Police Department. This agreement is for $500,000 in American Rescue Plan funds to support 2 co-responders to assist officers with crisis calls. There is already an existing MOU between Volunteer Behavioral Health and Murfreesboro Police Department where they're currently providing 1 co-responder. So this would augment that with 2 additional co-responders to help them with calls. These funds were included in the spending plan that was previously approved by Council, and both the subrecipient agreement and the funds are within the U.S. Treasury guidelines for the use of the funds. Any questions?
Where are they located at, officially Volunteer Behavioral Health, out of curiosity?
They have built a new facility over off of Medical Center, so they're behind the Sleep Center. So they have a nice facility out there now.
So they're a local company?
Yes, they serve a broad region of Middle Tennessee, but when they built that new facility, they included space for headquarters, so their CEO and other administrative staff are located there as well.
Any questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Haverwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ellen. All right, we have acquisition of properties for the Church Broad Street intersection.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Council previously approved some improvements to the Church Street Southeast Broad intersection to enhance the traffic flow and pedestrian movements in and out of the Central Business District. Improvements include an additional right turn lane on Church Street leaving the Central Business District, an additional right turn lane on Southeast Broad entering the Central Business District, streetscapes, and multi-use sidewalks along both sides of Church Street. These improvements require the acquisition of the used car lots on both sides of Church Street as you're entering the Central Business District. Acquisitions of the right-of-way and easements necessary for the intersection improvements render the remaining parts of these properties unusable as standalone parcels. Staff obtained appraisals on both properties and negotiated, subject to Council's approval, a reasonable purchase price of $650,000 for each lot on June 21st of 2022. The landowner has refused to respond to the city's final offer. Staff proposes to proceed with condemnation action and tender the appraised values of $460,000 each. The expenditures of $920,000 will be funded by the previously reallocated 22 CIP bond proceeds. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Haverwater.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Emerson. All right, we have the purchase of equipment.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight, I'm just asking you for the approval of a contract amendment for an equipment purchase for Old Fort Goff. This was approved back in September for 2 new greens mowers and 1 new fairway mower for Old Fort Goff. Due to delays with the supplier, which was a local supplier of Smith Turf and Irrigation, we're scheduled to receive those here soon. There's been a price increase with shipping costs, materials costs, so it's about an additional $12,431. It is fully funded in the 2022 CIP, so tonight we're just asking for that approved amendment. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is double second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. And Karen, I did not mean to call you Helen, but it's getting late and I'm wearing reading glasses, so I looked at the wrong spot. So, welcome to the next 4 years. All right, Nate, you're up, bud.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. Before we use a contract with Griggs and Maloney to design a skate park and pump track to be located at Old Fort Park. In 2021, we completed a feasibility study to see if there was a need for a skate park and a pump track, along with options for where it would be located. The conclusion of the study was simple. The need is for the amenity is very obvious. And it was determined that the best location would be Old Fort Park for a few reasons: access, security, safety. And we have existing infrastructure there that could already serve, such as lighting and parking lots, in an area that's not being used right now. Griggs and Maloney will partner with a prominent skate park developer to help us design specific features for the park, conduct multiple public input meetings, develop a site plan that meet all city planning requirements, and provide construction drawings for bidding, along with the geotechnical work, the surveying work, and everything that else goes into it. So the total cost is not to exceed $98,975. Funds for this project, including construction of this project, are allocated in the 2022-2023 operating budget. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Am I the only one that didn't know what a pump track was?
No.
Okay. I had to Google it to find out what a pump track was.
There's one in Nashville that's been extremely well used.
It looks exciting. It really does look exciting. And it's in the, where the pavilions were at Old Fort Park. So that's an area that's certainly, I think this is good planning again.
I do too, and I think we've learned where we have usable space, especially with parking, that parking is not being utilized very much back there at all. And there's some other, I think, significant safety concerns that have occurred back in that area that gives the opportunity to be able to not only put something that people will use, but activity breeds activity, and this is a good way to be able to keep that area safe.
Put all of our funds into the park element itself rather than building, $150,000 worth of parking.
Yep.
So moved.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Nate. All right, the contract with Action Enterprises for body and in-car camera solution. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For your consideration this evening is a request to enter into contract with Axon Enterprises to provide body-worn and in-car cameras for police personnel. Since the late 90s, a majority of our police vehicles have been equipped with in-car video cameras, and in recent years, the goal of providing police officers with body cameras was established, which was resulted in field testing and evaluation of different products. As a result, it was determined that Axon offered the best solution for our agency. The contract will allow us the ability to issue body-worn cameras for all of our sworn officers while providing in-car systems that will allow integration. We will also be able to obtain video and evidence storage under this contract. The overall contract term is 10 years and 9 months, with the FY23 prorated portion being $321,229 that will be funded from the police department operating budget. Subsequent funding requests will be brought to the council on an annual basis. At this time, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Chief, my only thought was in 10 years, the technology is going to change, but I understand that this contract includes upgrades and
it does.
Equipment, so.
That's correct, and Bill Terry is with us to where he can answer some of the questions, but it does involve upgrades as well.
Mr. Shacklet, it includes 4 upgrades in the life of the contract.
Awesome, correct.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I'm going to read this, just so people in the audience know that I'm reading it correctly. Purchase of International HV 607 chassis with brush hog knuckle loader street. street department. So, HAWG, hog.
Street sweeper.
Get Brandy.
All right, Mr. Gossett.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm standing in for Mr. Raymond Hillis for the Street Department. He is requesting the proposed purchase of the knuckle loader, the brush hog knuckle loader. This is for the Street Department's daily operation, and it will replace an existing knuckle loader. These trucks are used for large limb and brush removal in the trees crews' daily operations, as well as in acts of nature or other emergency situations. This expense is $195,864 and is funded in the FY22 CIP budget. I'm available for any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you, Russell. All right, you have 2 beer permits and a special event permit. Everything in order?
Yep, we have a new location for a restaurant at 1440 Medical Center Parkway and a ownership and name change for a restaurant at 1312 Northwest Broad Street. Both are pending building and codes. And everything else is in order for them. And then there's a special event for a Nourish Food Bank on October 29th. Everything's in order for that one as well.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Abstain.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, we will move to board and commission appointments. You have the Gateway Commission in front of you.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye, you also have the board and commission appointments for council members.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Maxwell.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. All right, any other business from staff?
No, I think our next meeting right now is planned for September the 22nd.
Oh, wow.
I believe that's correct.
Second.
Yeah, that's a Thursday, right? September the 22nd would be our next meeting.
So the library board appointment, Councilman Shacklet, I wrote down at the bottom, Sean Wright volunteered to go on there. So that way it even everybody would equal out. So I apologize that, do I need to?
Does he have a library card?
Do I need to remake that motion for board and committee appointments as amended with, I wrote it for the record, but I apologize. Can I get a motion for an amended board for appointing Sean Wright to the library board, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Thank you, Bill.
Ms. Averwater. Aye. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell. I'm sorry.
Aye. Good.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mr. Wright.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Welcome to the library board, Sean.
I feel good about our libraries now, I'll tell you.
All right. Craig,
We have the September 22nd.
okay. So will we be having, we will not have a workshop for September, is that correct?
No, we didn't plan a workshop for this September. We'll have one in October, second Wednesday in October, which should be the 12th. We may have a presentation on the 22nd, we'll see, for information purposes.
Okay. All right. Any other business from council members? All right.
Do we need to nominate a vice mayor?
That we do. We need, I've typically stayed out of that, so the council needs to have a discussion on nominating a vice mayor, please.
Mayor and council members, it has been my pleasure to serve as your vice mayor. and I have held this position with integrity and with dignity, and I've served the people to the best of my ability. But I feel a position like this, with all the honors that comes with it, should be passed to other council members. I have thoroughly enjoyed serving as your vice mayor for the citizens out in Murfreesboro in our city. And for you council members, thank you so much for reappointing me. And at this time, I would like to nominate Councilman Bill Shacklett. Bill Shacklett, he has integrity, and anytime a council member can run every time in an election and never spend a penny, never buy a sign, and wins the election by a landslide, he deserves to be our vice mayor. Because I'm broke, and I don't know how you get... I'm at the point now I'm too poor to pay attention. And so, I don't know how you do it, Bill, but I think you deserve it. So I'd like to make a motion.
What happened next?
Second. All right, motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Averwater?
Aye.
Ms. Harris, Scales Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Maxwell?
Abstain.
Mr. Shacklett?
Abstain.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mr. Wright?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. All right. Any other business from council members? All right, we'll stand adjourned.